Gemini, communication coming in this week is going to bring you some choices to make. So let's get into your cards. Okay, Gemini, first we're going to do your general reading, which I pulled before we got started, and then towards the end we're going to get you some guidance cards. So let's get into it. I can see that this week is going to be a time of mental confusion or mental fog around a choice that you have surrounding something that has to do with long-term financial gain. So maybe, you have a choice coming up with work, um, maybe around staying there, or, there's communication that comes in around this long-term position that you're in, maybe around getting more hours or a title change, something like that, because I can see that you have a choice and it has to do, again, with something that is a long term financial engagement, and there's communication and action coming in around this. And for some reason, it sends you into this like mental fog, maybe because there's multiple options that come up for you, and it leads to choices that you're not super sure about yet. But I can see that, you have some kind of communication or change coming in around something that you're currently involved in financially, right? Um, and I can see that this week you're going to have some clarity come in around something that's been mentally, again, like confusing to you. You have the Five of Wands, which is a card of like outside competition, conflict. It can also come up when you're kind of like mentally at a tug of war with yourself, right? About like what it is you're trying to focus on, or maybe your time with like work and home. Like you're kind of at this tug of war with yourself, because I can see that, you got the Magician and the Two of Pentacles. So to me, it speaks about like, kind of being at this, again, I just keep getting the word tug of war with yourself about like what you're trying to manifest and what you're trying to build your life into, and then like work, right? And trying to find a good balance with that. And you're trying to be like pretty firm on your boundaries, maybe with like your time at work, like you're pretty firm about like, I want to be part time, because you have other things that you're wanting to focus on and manifest into your existence. So, like, I think that's where you have mental clarity come in this week about like how to set that boundary, or maybe you set that boundary this week with work and you have that balance come into play, because I do see you being kind of like at a tug of war with yourself when it comes to that. Um, and I think when that happens for you, that clarity, it brings in a lot of emotional happiness and celebration, because like maybe it's just this choice that comes in, maybe it has to do with you possibly getting more hours or a different title, and it comes down to you having to be like, no, I don't want that. Even though financially it sounds great, um, that there's other things that you want to put your time into, right? So when that happens, it's kind of like a relief and an aha moment, and it brings in a lot of happiness for you, because you're like, okay, now that boundary's set, that conversation's been had, and now like I'm happy with my balance. So let's get you some guidance cards for this week. What is coming in for Gemini this week? Okay, so you got gracious receptivity and communication co-creation. And both of these landed over the side of your reading that had to do with the choice and communication coming in. So let's get into gracious receptivity. Consider your relationship with gratitude. How comfortable you feel receiving and what you love to give. Are there themes that allow you the joyous overflow of giving without limitation? How can you add this to the lives of others more often, away from the fear that you will get used up if you give without guaranteed receptivity? Are there areas where you are overextending yourself? Can you give more from areas where you're stronger and have more skill and capacity? Right now, you may feel you have little to give. If so, allow yourself to receive more. The gift of the sun on your face on a winter's day or a compliment from a stranger. Allow yourself to drink every drop. After all, it is up to you how deeply you wish to drink of the gift that is shared. Often we take only a little sip when there is so much more we could appreciate. And yet it is so beautiful when you give to someone and they light up and receive it fully. Keywords: gratitude, being thankful, receptivity without expectation, how worthiness and self love can affect your capacity to receive and to give without deception or depletion, overflow over obligation, thriving over surviving, gifting economies. So, to me, this guidance it's speaking all about gratitude and receptivity without expectation, and self love. To me, the key thing that stuck out was like thriving without surviving. And I feel like, what I was feeling off of that choice that comes in, again, that's where you're going to have to set that boundary. And I think when you do that, you are giving to yourself, right? You're receiving this offer and you're giving back to yourself, and you're thriving instead of just in that survival mode, right? And like being able to give without depletion. Um, and sorry, I was just like looking at her card where she's like this, and it's like, you're receiving this message and this offer, but also I feel like, you're going to set that tone to where you're more so looking out for yourself, right? Instead of depleting yourself. Okay, so communication co-creation. How are you communicating beyond words? Perhaps you are being misunderstood because there is a dissonance between your words, actions, and behaviors and what you mean to communicate. Words are like spells, so be conscious of what you say, and you may be verbally sabotaging your intended meaning. Also, be reminded that words can mean different things to different people. Something may get lost in translation. An issue may be cleared through improved communication. Listen carefully to what someone has to say without interruption. Furthermore, it may feel scary to share vulnerable truths, but this may be the only way forward. This card also encourages greater exploration in the realms of telepathy, healing, and the arts such as poetry, painting, and music, where there is collective communication beyond the mind. Keywords: nonverbal communication, love language, telepathy, unique ways of communicating, light language, multidimensional information, community coexistence, relationships, meeting our higher selves, really seeing someone, and deeper listening. To me, this just speaks of like communicating your truth, right? And verbally sticking up for yourself. And the guidance is like, don't be scared to share your vulnerable truth, right? Like when this choice comes in, don't be scared to be vulnerable and say, like, I know I'm a really hard worker and I'm always willing to help out, but I still want to be part time, or I still want to, like, have time to have a balanced, life. That's why I took this job. So, it just to me says, yeah, respecting your higher self, making sure that you're having those boundaries and being vulnerable. So, yeah, that's what I have for you this week, Gemini. If that message resonates, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I would truly appreciate the support, and have an awesome week. Bye, my little mystics.